The new podcast, In the Shadow of Princeton, starts as the matriarch of a prominent Princeton family is found stabbed to death in her locked basement. Investigators look from a serial attacker to her family to Princeton University students. One hot-blooded investigator sees a conspiracy. Is he way off base, or does privilege let you get away with murder? In the Shadow of Princeton is available wherever you get podcasts, or you can binge it ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
It is the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Bill Oram joined by Brenna Greene of KOIN 6. Brenna, what's happening?
Nothing at all. A totally calm and chill weekend. We have nothing to talk about.
Oregon 32, Ohio State 31. One of the crazier games that I think either of us has ever covered, been a part of. You and I both got caught up in the on-field hullabaloo at the end. If we can, the mayhem, absolute mayhem on the field. But let's start here, Brenna, with the topic du jour, de week, really, which is the intentional 12 men on the field penalty at the end of the game by Dan Lanning to milk 4 seconds off the clock and basically seal the win. Dan Lanning, great coach. I'm going full Stephen Colbert here. Dan Lanning, great coach or greatest coach?
So it seems that we're both in agreement that this wasn't that bad and that it's not the end of the world. Boy, there's a few people on my Twitter feed that are like, I've lost all respect for Dan Lanning, and this is awful, and this is scuzzy, and whatever. And it's like, he's just playing within the rule. For me, I'm just like, he's just playing within the rules. Like, that's what the rules say. So I don't have a problem with it. Like, and I thought about it, if this were the other way and Ohio State did this, would I have the same reaction? And I do think I would have had the same reaction of like, hey, like they didn't do anything illegal. Somebody said on my Twitter feed, they're like, boy, you're going to really freak out when you find out about intentional fouling in basketball. So, and I was like, that's actually a really, really great, like, equivalency. 2 things: to stop the clock, get the ball back, and keep on trucking. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with it. Obviously it worked out and it was a smart thing to do in the moment. Who knows? I mean, I don't foresee them pulling that out again this year. Let's put it that way, because now opponents are going to be watching for it. But I have no issue with it, and it obviously worked out. So, he's, like I said, he played within the rules. If you're coming out of a timeout and you have a 12-man on the field penalty, either A, you are the worst coach ever, or you're the best coach ever. So, we're going with option B here. Thankfully. But yeah, I don't really understand people being all up in arms about it, but that's just me.
So if I'm the NCAA rules committee,
yeah,
I might have an issue with it, but I don't have an issue with it as an observer of Oregon football or as a college football fan. I think this is something where the NCAA could take a look at it and they could change the rule. They could say that needs to be a dead ball foul, and if they do that, I have no problem with that either.
Yep.
But I think that I think that you're really spot on here with the fact that this is, a coach knowing the rules of the game and working them to his advantage. And it's not the first time it's been done. Rick Neuheisel talked on the Dan Patrick Show about having this happen to him when he was at UCLA. And
with 13 people on the field.
With 13. I mean, why wouldn't you put 25 players on the field? Like, why wouldn't you just be like, if you have a jersey on, get on the field and defend somebody? 12 is okay. Which, by the way, if somebody did do that, if they did say we're going to put 20 players on the field because it's no more of a penalty than having 12, I might be like, okay, we're kind of beyond reason here. But again, it's a wink. I mean, Ryan Day is also a very good football coach, and do you think Ryan Day wouldn't love to pull that move on somebody too?
Oh yeah.
He got outfoxed in that situation, or Dan was in a position to do the outfoxing, and it worked. It was great. And ultimately, is that why Oregon won the game? Probably not. I mean, Ohio State would have had a few more ticks to take a shot or get into field goal range. I mean, they were probably 5-10 yards from field goal range. So it wasn't like, there was a ton separating Ohio State from getting there. But no, I thought it was smart. I thought it was savvy. I enjoyed kind of everybody including myself, by the way, everybody waking up to what had happened, because in real time, standing on the sideline,
I was
still, kind of reeling from the offensive pass interference and kind of living and dying with, every snap like everyone else. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, 12 men on the field. Okay, well, what's the math on that? Where are they relative to field goal range now? Didn't make the connection. Wait a minute, they just came out of a timeout. How could that possibly happen? It couldn't. Very, very savvy by Dan Lanning. And, if the rule changes, you won't do that again next year. But for the time being, and by the way, if they're in the same situation again this year, they will do it again because the rule would still benefit them. So, I just thought it was a tremendous sort of wrinkle to what was already an insane night. And I loved that Noah Eagle on the broadcast said this game has everything. Like in the first half, before this game had so much more that still happened. Like before Trayshawn Holden got ejected for spitting on a cornerback. Like this game did have almost everything, which I mean made it just absolutely bonkers and really difficult to cover and write about, to try to encapsulate.
Yeah, it was not an easy one for me to. I just had to do like the from up top kind of angle of the game for our broadcast for our 10 and 11 o'clock shows. Our up in the nosebleeds look at it of like, hey, this celebration, everybody rushed the field. Big day at Oregon, because trying to get into anything specific in that game was nearly impossible, especially on the amount of time that we all had to turn something from that. So yeah, it was definitely a game where you're not going to be able, you're not going to use your post game report to get into X's and O's. That's for sure. So
what, I mean, okay. So that game was crazy from almost the jump, because on the first possession, you have Jeffrey Bassa Jeffrey Bassa stripping the ball from Ohio State's receiver. Well, I guess that wasn't a strip.
It wasn't a strip. It was
the ball
bounced into his hands.
Kind of loose in the hands of the receiver. Jeffrey Bassa comes away with it, kind of rolls over with it. One of two things probably could have been ruled on the play. Like, at least initially you were like, okay, it could be an incompletion, I guess, or it's an interception. But what it is not is a completion to Ohio State, because the receiver never has possession of that ball.
Nope.
And with no review, we keep on trucking. Oh, crazy. Like, and
everything in college football was reviewed.
So that was wild. Ohio State goes on to score. So we already are in a game where the Ducks Ohio State's been spotted a 7-point lead, basically, like a 7-point handicap in this game. Then you have obviously the ejection, you have a missed field goal, you have a botched PAT, then you have them going for 2, chasing the points and not getting it. The Ducks left a lot of points on the field in this game. And I think my biggest takeaway is that as close as Oregon was to losing this game at the end, because Ohio State had the ball in field goal range in the final minute. If not for that offensive pass interference, I think there's every reason to think Ohio State steals the win at the end. But in aggregate, on the whole in this game, Oregon didn't just beat Ohio State. They beat down Ohio State.
They were much better.
So, coming into the game, Ohio State's defense was top 5 in all 4 of the major defensive categories. Scoring, number 1, 6.8 per game. Oregon scores 32 points. Number 1 in total defense, allowing 202 yards per game. Oregon outgains Ohio State 496 to 467. Ohio State is 3rd in rushing defense, allowing 72 yards per game. The Ducks rush for 155 yards. And they are 4th in passing, 129 yards per game. Dylan Gabriel passes for 341 yards with no interceptions. Offensively, Oregon destroyed Ohio State in a way that team has not been picked apart this year. And then defensively, you hold their top rushers to a combined, let's see, do the quick math on that, 110 yards. You take that. Will Howard, was also very good, 326 yards. But when you consider the points that Oregon essentially spotted Ohio State, the 7 to start the game, the field goal, and then maybe you'd say in a perfect world, 2 extra points, right? Because they, if they make the first extra point, they probably just kick it the second time. So we're at 12 points. And maybe you say, okay, well, Oregon got lucky too because they line drived it off of, the upfield, Ohio State player on the kickoff, and it's football. Things happen. Like, as my good friend JaVale McGee liked to say, if ifs were fifths, we'd all be drunk. But
JaVale McGee, Nevada Wolfpack legend. Continue.
But I just felt like, when you kind of took away some of the nonsense from this game, some of the oddities from this game, Oregon was better. And I think Oregon was quite a bit better. And that kind of has me rethinking a lot about this team going forward and, the prospects of actually bringing home a national championship. Now, granted, it's going to be it's easier than ever to reach the postseason in college football because it's 12-team playoff. I think at this point, I'd say probably 85% chance, 90% chance Oregon's in the 12-team field. Like, things would have to go really wrong for them not to make the playoff at this point because they're going to be favored in every game the rest of the way, obviously, at least until the Big Ten championship game. You lose a Big Ten championship game, you're still in. You drop a game at Michigan and lose in the Big Ten championship game, you're probably still in. So I don't see Oregon really falling out of the 12-team playoff unless catastrophe strikes, which of course happens in college football. But it's easier than ever to make the playoff, but it's going to be harder than ever to actually win the dang thing just because there's just more layers to go through. You're going to have to go through not just Ohio State, but also Georgia, also Notre Dame, Clemson, whoever it is. You got to win more games. It's a bigger playoff, and weird things happen in the playoffs. That's why you and I both love the FCS so much because it's not always, well, it is always North Dakota State or South Dakota State right now. But like weird things happen in a playoff, and you're seeing it in baseball. I mean, you see it in the NFL every year. Being the best team in the regular season in the NFL is not necessarily the key to winning the whole thing. And some people think that is not good. I think it's great. I think it is absolutely great. The regular season should matter, and the regular season does matter, but I want the playoffs to matter. I don't want it to be fait accompli. I don't want it to be, these two teams are the only two that have a chance at it. Like, let's go. Win in the playoffs. Love it. Excited.
He's ready for December, folks. Yeah, it was, I guess, it's funny. You'll appreciate this. I got a text last night from my friend who works in Indianapolis. And they said, the Ducks are coming to Indy. And I was like, well, I mean, we still got a few more weeks, like blah, 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 blah. Like, don't get ahead of yourself. And he's like, no, they're playing Purdue. And I was like, yes, that. Yes. Like, I was like, well, I guess I should probably out myself. Like, geez, apparently my mind is already in December. So yeah, I'm not even thinking. I was like, I totally forgot that Purdue was that close to Indianapolis. Like, didn't even think about it. But yeah, I don't think our minds are really on Purdue right now around here.
A lot of Indianapolis in the Big Ten. Let me tell you, Big Ten Media Days, Indianapolis. You play Purdue, go to Indianapolis. Big Ten championship game, Indianapolis. I guess if you go to Indiana, you're probably flying into Indianapolis too. I like Indianapolis fine. I just liked it better when, as an NBA beat writer, I went there once a year and didn't necessarily have to make the decision whether I wanted to go like 4 times between July and December. It's perfectly fine. Enjoy the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's. I've got spots. Love going to the Slippery Noodle in the evening. Used to get the French onion soup after Pacers games. I'm not saying that they're known for the French onion soup or that you should even make an effort, a point of getting the French onion soup there. I'm just saying that when it's 17 degrees in Indianapolis and it's like 11:30 at night and you're a little hungry, French onion soup sounds nice. I enjoy it.
Well, I too have spent my fair share of time in Indianapolis. It was only one visit, but it was 10 days in Indy during the NCAA tournament.
That counts.
Yeah, in 2021. So I too have a few favorite haunts in Indianapolis. I did not get to go to St. Elmo's because they had a COVID outbreak. Shocker. What? And they had to close the restaurant down.
Travel tip, you can get the shrimp cocktail at Harry and Izzy's at the airport. Now, I'm not saying it's not 1-to-1, but it is the same cocktail sauce. It is also a very impressive shrimp cocktail. So Harry and Izzy's sister restaurant to St. Elmo's at the Indianapolis airport is a decent backup if you don't have time to make it to the actual institution. Wow. Speaking of which, so I'm not going to Indy. I'm not going to this Purdue game. I made that decision a long time ago. But we have talked on this podcast before, and we're going to get back to Oregon, Ohio State. Like this, Oregon and Ohio State right now is the sun, and everything else is just sort of like, like atmospheric detritus, kind of like swirling around it. But I do want to point out that we did say early. So first of all, you and I both picked Oregon to beat Ohio State in the preseason on this podcast last week. We both seemed pretty skeptical of that happening. I came around later in the week in print. I picked Oregon by a field goal. Didn't feel great about it. So, I'll take my kudos, but I will tell you that I was not very confident in that pick. So, whatever. But we've talked about Purdue as a trap game before, and Purdue just played its best game of the year.
Yep.
Took a ranked Illinois team to overtime, lost 50-49. 49 points. My goodness. I saw Purdue a few weeks ago against Oregon State. I wasn't sure they'd score 49 points again the rest of the year total.
Yeah.
They have a freshman quarterback who's now the starter. Hudson Card, the former Texas quarterback, who at one point was was considering Oregon State before they got DJ Uiagalelei, was the starter last year, and at the start of this year wasn't going great. He is either injured and out or will be the backup, which means that this is a slightly different look for Purdue than maybe we've had all year to sort of mock and tease and basically declare as one of the 10 worst teams in the country. Do you have any level of concern for Oregon against the Boilermakers on Friday night in West Lafayette?
Not really. No.
Yeah.
I think that Lanning has proved over the years that he's able to keep this team focused without, even with the distractions. Now, this is on another level. They haven't dealt with coming off of a game of this magnitude before and having it be a win, because the other games that were like that were against a team up north that they did not have success against, in particular last year. So, I do think this is a new version of that test, and we'll see how they do. But so far, Oregon has not allowed letdowns in the game after a big win. So for right now, I will believe the track record. We'll see if this is anything different considering the magnitude of it. But right now, I have to believe what history indicates as a situation that will not be a problem. So we'll see. It's a challenging game just from the parameters of it. Of, hey, you're flying out to West Lafayette on a Thursday instead of a Friday. You know, you have a game that's, gosh, what time does that game start? 5? 5.
I think 5 our time, right?
Yeah. So 2. Yeah. So it's not that bad.
It'll be 8 o'clock kick in Indiana.
Yeah. So it's not that bad in terms of like what time it is and all that sort of stuff. But for Oregon, but honestly, for Purdue, that's not fun. 8 o'clock kick on a Friday is not ideal. Because yes, Indiana for some reason is in the Eastern time zone. I don't really understand that, but anyways, didn't understand that in my 10 days there. I was like, why are we not in Central time here? I don't understand, but okay. It's just not a good game fact wise for Oregon, and the fact obviously that Purdue is coming off of their best game of the year, but I still feel as though Oregon has done a good job in, Oregon's done a good job in not letting these games be a problem. What do you think?
I mean, so these things happen, right? Like there's letdowns in college football. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt.
Yep.
So things do happen. Purdue has historically kind of been a spoiler maker in the Big Ten. So I think that you're a little bit mindful of that. That said, this has not been a good football team. And you are right that Oregon, even games they've lost, is generally very well prepared and seems to be locked in. There's kind of always like one game in an Oregon season under Dan Lanning where you're kind of like, that wasn't the way that was supposed to go, but they get the win. His first year, there was the Washington State game where they had to come back in the fourth quarter. Last year at Texas Tech had to come back in the fourth quarter. You know, this year, maybe you put the Boise State game as that game, or the Idaho game, although they weren't trailing. Those were both at home, though. And we haven't seen this team really go on the road into a particularly hostile environment. I know Oregon State, but the Ducks are just on a different level than the Beavers right now. And UCLA was like going to a football game at church because, the Rose Bowl, but it was actually not that empty at the Rose Bowl. I don't want to say that it was like a terrible crowd. It was just a ton of Duck fans. So all that adds up. This is a new experience. They haven't gone to the Eastern time zone, as you said. Big Ten teams haven't fared well traveling 2 time zones. Penn State, barely beat USC on the road. You've seen, I guess there's like reasons to like take it seriously and to be mindful. But I think that that's the sort of stuff that is being drilled internally this week too. Mm-hmm. And I just think Oregon is playing at a really, really elite level. Defensively, they delivered in a huge way. I mean, filling in for Jordan Birch in the way they did. Again, you and I were both kind of thinking that it could have been a long day for Oregon on Saturday going in. And then you start hearing late in the week that Jordan Birch is hurt, lower leg injury, not likely to play. And it's like, man, if they don't have Jordan Birch, how are they going to stop the ground game of Ohio State? And all of a sudden, man, I mean, Jamari Caldwell, Mateo Uyunglele, I mean, it was a great collective effort where I was like, these guys all can play. So I think they answered that question. I just feel good about Oregon right now. I don't know. I'm sure there will be another test. I don't think it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
I just don't think it's going to be this week. So Illinois comes. Illinois is playing well. That could be a tough game. You go to Michigan. Tough environment. Michigan's good at home. Michigan has talent. You go to Wisconsin. Tough environment. Could be cold. Could be snowing. It's going to be my birthday. So
are you going to be spending your birthday in Wisconsin?
I'm going to be spending my birthday in Madison. If anybody has great suggestions on what we should do in Madison, if anybody's in Madison and wants to hang out with me on my birthday, that would be great too, because I'm going to be missing my family and friends, but mostly my family that day. So this got sad. So keep me in mind if you're in Madison on November 16th. But I mean, those games strike me as, take those a little more serious. I mean, take them all seriously, but those seem more likely to be where you could see Oregon trip up than Purdue. I don't think Maryland here is gonna be an issue. Husky game is always intense. Jed Fish is a really good coach, but Ducks are playing a lot better than all these teams right now.
There you go. I just did the. Will I be spending could I potentially be spending my birthday covering some college football playoff action?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Wow, look at this. Yep.
Because you're a New Year's Eve baby, right?
No, well, the day before.
Oh, right. So we talked about the Sun Bowl. Okay.
So yeah. Yep. I could very much, depending upon the Fiesta Bowl is on the 31st inexplicably, and then the other 3 games are on the 1st. So regardless, I could most definitely be on the road for my birthday, which is fine by me. Fine. So if I'm in that situation, it's a good time, and I will very happily celebrate a birthday at a media day. Thank you very much. So hopefully we're in that position where we're able to just, I'm able to have I would prefer my birthday to be in Pasadena just for the fine people, or I could do in Arizona. Just for, just for the people at the CFP committee who very much care about where I spend my birthday. Atlanta's cool, but I don't really want to go that far. And where's the Sugar Bowl?
New Orleans.
In Texas? New Orleans? Yeah, that's cool. That'd be cool. I'd take that.
Have you been to New Orleans?
No, I haven't.
You want your birthday to be in New Orleans.
Okay, all right.
Trust me.
Do I want my birthday to be in New Orleans? Because
I don't know if you're going to make it to the game, but you do want your birthday to be in New Orleans.
Exactly. I think it might be problematic for me doing my job if it was in New Orleans.
I got spots in New Orleans. Again, this is all like based on my NBA life and super late nights and getting out of arenas very late, but have definitely spent some early morning hours at Snake and Jake's Christmas Club Lounge.
Ooh.
Up in the Garden District, close to Tulane. So
I'm intrigued. Yeah, maybe we should. Maybe I should actually put New Orleans on the bottom of my list just for the sake of my sanity. Especially since I'm sure. See, these are things that newspaper people don't have to deal with. I am sure that I would be doing morning live shots the day after my birthday on the 31st.
You'd be doing shots on live on the morning air. Like that's New Orleans. Okay. Sorry, I got recollecting some past New Orleans trips. What a great town.
You had a look in your eyes that just felt like something totally washed over you for a second.
I just don't know how to pivot back to ineligible receiver penalty after this, or Trayshawn Holden's spitting, or whatever else. Okay. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. What else stood out to you about Oregon's big win against Ohio State, Brenna?
Thank you so much, Bill, for asking. I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but Oregon being able to pull off this win without some of their key contributors. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Jordan Birch, but you also, as you just alluded to, Trayshawn Holden doing what he did. Yeah, you know what's really weird? It was a really weird feeling I had, but right when he caught that pass that got them in the red zone, I thought to myself, put the ball down, walk away. Put the ball down, walk away. Because I just had this weird feeling that he was going to celebrate too much and get penalized, you know? And I guess I was right to have that gut reaction because yes, he did get too into the moment. It just took a play for that to show. Trayshawn is obviously he's a very emotive guy. Like that's just what he is. He's a great interview. And he's, somebody who gets into it on the field. But this was not this is not the way that anyone wanted him to get into it on the field. Okay. Also a completely useless thing to do because you're spitting on a visor. So you didn't even, it didn't
Does
even
that
land.
make it better? I've thought about this. Does that make it better? Does that make it less egregious?
No.
Because it wasn't like in his actual face?
No. Because there's no point in which Trayshawn Holden is thinking, oh, it's a visor, it's okay. Like the intent behind that is to nail someone with a loogie. There's in the heat of the moment, all he's thinking about is he wants to spit on this guy. He isn't thinking about the fact that, oh, this guy is wearing a visor, so therefore it won't technically land on him. So it's okay. And to be honest with you, it made it worse because then it was just totally obvious to the ref what had happened.
Like when when like a bug hits your windshield, then you turn your windshield wipers on and it just smears the bug more and more on the windshield. Yeah. It kind of looked like that. Like there were some pictures that there's good photographers out there where you could see the spittle on the visor. And it's just, listen, here's the thing. From a football standpoint, spitting, and from like a sportsmanship standpoint, this is a big deal, right? Like do not spit on your opponent. Do not degrade your opponent. It is treating your opponent as subhuman. If somebody spit on you in real life, that is that assault? Like that is getting very close to assault. Yeah. So I don't want to minimize the seriousness of what Trayshawn Holden did on a human level. But I also think that the whole thing is funny. I think it is objectively funny that we are like having to find different ways to describe him spitting on this guy, especially as a writer. Like, what are the limits of how I can describe this? Like I used phlegm. I called it a phlegm related incident in a column yesterday. And I got an email from Paul Lindman, your fellow legendary Oregon broadcaster, K2 legend Paul Lindman of Exploding Whale fame, right? He emailed me and he's like, Bill, I don't think you can use phlegm. There's no evidence that he actually hawked a loogie. You just said loogie. And I feel entitled to take this to loogie and phlegm level, even though we don't know. There is just as much evidence that he did hawk a loogie as that he didn't hawk a loogie. What say you?
Are we really getting into the semantics of what his spit contained?
I'm not having a serious conversation about like what should his punishment be. Like I am fine with the way this is being adjudicated. He got kicked out of the game. We're going to know on Saturday if he is suspended. If he's in street clothes on the sidelines, or did I say Saturday? Friday night game, Bill. If he's on the sidelines in street clothes, he's suspended. If he doesn't play the first half and plays the second half, he was suspended for a half. I think either of those is a reasonable further punishment. If he's lined up for the first snap on Friday night, I don't love that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that,
and I don't think that's what's going to happen. Like based on what Dan Lanning said.
Yeah.
So I guess I would rather laugh at the absurdity of it than be super holier than thou and high and mighty over something that should not have happened, should not happen, and I hope we don't have to talk about it again.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see if he travels. Because there's a world in which he just doesn't travel.
Totally. Absolutely.
So we'll see how that goes. That's going to be something I'm going to be watching for on Friday for sure.
And I would also like to say
that as if I'm going to actually be able to watch the game on Friday when I'm going to be at multiple high schools on Friday.
I would also like to say I do feel bad for Trayshawn Holden. Like, this is obviously a bad choice, a really bad choice. You know, you're in a huge game, you hurt your team. Like, I believe he feels very guilty, and he should. Like, it was a big mistake, but we see people do things all the time in the, you know, quote unquote heat of battle of sports. And I get it to a point, to an extent, you know, like, again, don't degrade your opponent. Like, he took it obviously way too far, but, you know, I'm sure that he is really beating himself up over this, and, you know, did it to himself. But, like, to what extent do we need to really pile on for something that, like, everybody knows is a mistake?
Yeah. And the apology to me seemed very genuine. It seemed, you know, the way that it was worded and said really did come off to me like a guy who was not pleased with his own actions and felt incredibly remorseful. So, and I believe it. I totally believe that from him. So, you know, as somebody who has interacted with him a few times, nothing crazy, but a few times, I do believe that this is not him as a human being. And, you know, maybe it's not only a good lesson for him, but a good lesson for the whole team to learn right now. You know, this is a good thing for everybody to be like, okay, remember what happened in that game? Maybe don't do that. You know, don't get too high or too low, because it could end up hurting your whole team in the end. And thankfully in this situation, it didn't. But when it comes to a college football playoff, that could easily be the thing that separates a team. Well, when you're losing, I mean, I would say your number 2 receiver this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he's been number 2. Now, Evan Stewart might have surpassed him on Saturday, but at that point, Trayshawn's been number 2 all year. So, it's absurd. I totally agree with you that it's just like, it's one of those things where you're sitting in the press box and you're like, wait, what happened?
Well, you just don't even believe, and you're looking at it and you're like, are we sure that's what he did? Because it defies logic that it would happen, right? Like, you really going to spit on your opponent? And by the way, maybe Trayshawn Holden needs to have like one of those protective visors over his face mask too, so that if he ever gets the impulse to spit on somebody again, it just hits the inside. Like, sort of as a preventative measure. A visor around your face mask? Just it just comes down extra far, sort of like Daft Punk.
I would imagine that's against the NCAA rules, but I appreciate the thought.
Just looking out here.
Yeah, that seems like something that could break very easily.
It is ridiculous how many things happen in this game. Like, that's really the takeaway. Like, there were so many things that I feel like on a typical weekend would have been the biggest story of the weekend. You know, interception, the strip fumble by Derek Harmon was an incredible play, play of strength. Like, barely got talked about. You know, it's like, that is the kind of game that's the kind of play that makes a huge difference in a 1-point game. Are you kidding? Missed field goal, you know, messed up extra points, bad officiating. I mean, goodness, if Oregon did lose this game, I mean, they would have had legitimate grievances to file. Yeah. Legitimate. And I don't think the NCAA does anything. You know, I don't think they reverse the outcome if, you know, Ohio State ends up going and kicking a game-winning field goal. But I think legitimately Oregon could come away, you know, like how there used to be disputed college national championships. I feel like Oregon could have disputed the outcome of that game based on some of the things that happened, at least internally, like in spirit disputed it because of it. So, I mean, it's good that they won, that we're not in that situation where they have to feel like they were robbed.
There was a call that Dan Lanning said, and I'm totally blanking on what it was right now. It was the eligible receiver downfield in the third quarter, and it ended up, let me remember correctly, there were offsetting penalties. There was pass interference and an ineligible receiver downfield, and so they offset, and
it ended up affecting the drive, and I'd have to go back and look at the play-by-play. Sorry, I could get James Crepia on the phone and he would tell us, but it ended up stalling an Oregon drive when they would have otherwise, had a first down. And so that's the sort of thing I'm talking about, where the fact, okay, you got an acknowledgement that it was the wrong call. Boom. Obviously the interception was the wrong call. Boom. Oregon won the game. Oregon won the game on the scoreboard, in the box score, on the field. Just, to me, indisputably. So we move on. We move on to Purdue. We move on to what's next, which is kind of crazy because we spent so much time looking ahead to this game.
Mm-hmm.
A year looking ahead to this game.
Yeah.
And then it happened, and it actually delivered, which doesn't always happen. In fact, I would say it very often doesn't.
Yep.
Where, does the game actually live up to the hype? How could it? I think this exceeded it. Like, it actually exceeded the hype of the game.
Yeah. No, I feel you there, which never happens. That is so rare that a game is actually better than people think it is going to be.
And then, that's where we get back to the question of how do you come down from that and get back in the trenches and prepare for what is invariably a letdown experience of going to Purdue on a Friday night. I think that's just going to be something to watch. But I mean, obviously Oregon has goals beyond beating Ohio State and beating Purdue and Illinois and Maryland and, obviously Michigan, Wisconsin, Washington. That's all part of the journey. So we'll see. But I thought just a very, very, very complete and impressive performance by everyone. We could go down the list. Dylan Gabriel was great. Jordan James, tremendous. The defense, the linebacker stepped up. Derek Harmon, Mateo Uiagalelei. I'm going down the list now. Andrew Boyle. Just a very complete performance. Well done by the Ducks.
Kudos. Is there anything you want to talk about not Ducks related?
Yeah, there's a few things that we should touch on. The Beavers did lose in Nevada, which wasn't totally shocking. Certainly disappointing for the Beavs. That is a team that they should beat. They have more talent, but the Oregon State defense is completely and tons of injuries, and already kind of struggled against the run. Nevada comes in with with a strong ground game. I worry for the Beavs going forward. UNLV comes in on Saturday night with one of the top 5 rushing attacks in the country. That might be a blowout, I'm sorry to say, for the Beavers. They're sitting at 4-2. I think, projecting their chances at a bowl game, I think, are still good when you look at San Jose State coming to Reser in a few weeks, Air Force coming to Reser. What am I forgetting? Washington State, right now, you'd probably say L. Boise State, L. But, I think the Beavs probably get to bowl eligibility, but, season's kind of taking a bit of a turn for the worse with that Nevada loss. You generally don't want to, pin too much on a single defeat, but, that was a game that, you penciled in as a W for Oregon State, and they don't have a ton of those to give away. Didn't get to watch a ton of the game. I'll admit I had it on my computer. It was on my computer in the Autzen press box, but that tab didn't get opened up a ton.
Yeah.
But Giovanni McCoy, 3 interceptions, kind of turning into what you expected, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's bad on defense when you have a guy who's listed as a tight end on your roster out there playing on defense.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Nick Dash and I were texting about it during the game, and at some point, the reality is just the reality. The Beavers have lost a lot on the line and defensively this year already, and that is going to take its toll. And you can, I think Trent Bray said yesterday that, hey, the 3rd and 4th stringers are on scholarship too. That's true, but there's a reason that they are, they're not ready. These might be the guys who you're leaning on in 2 years or not, but they might be. But the reason they're on their third or fourth string now is that they're not ready. You don't trust them. So we'll see. UNLV is a great test. UNLV would be a great way for them to get back on the back on the horse. I mean, the Beavers are really good at Reeser. Fun atmosphere, night game, Reeser Stadium. Should be fun. I do think, by the way, when we think about game operations, Oregon State, they do love Party in the USA.
Boy, do they.
And what's the other one we get? Thunderstruck? They do Thunderstruck? Is that the other one they do?
Maybe it is.
But you know what I would like them to start incorporating? You should know this song. Maybe you don't. Can we get Something in the Orange by Zach Bryan? Like, can that be like the anthem? Has nothing to do with football. It's like a sad song, but like, can we get like the entire stadium singing Something in the Orange by Zach Bryan? Like, that seems like something that should happen.
I'm down for that.
Okay. I've actually proposed this to at least one high-ranking Oregon State administrator, and they didn't say, "Bill, go away, you're annoying me." So I feel like we've gotten the ball rolling. That is my contribution to Oregon State discourse this week.
It was just an aside about
TNT, not Thunderstruck.
Okay, there we go. About Andy Alfieri playing is that Trent Bryce said in his press conference yesterday that they did not start getting him defensive snaps until Wednesday. This guy had played 2 practices at defense, 2, and was out there legitimately playing on Saturday. Yeah. And if that doesn't illustrate the situation that this team is in terms of injuries, then I don't know what does. Because this is a guy that is listed as a tight end, and that doesn't mean he's, Trent did make mention that, he was recruited out of high school as a defensive end, which I had kind of forgotten, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But, he got 2 practices and was out there playing. Like, he was out, which is crazy at the D1 level. That is insane. So, yeah, that really illustrates everything for me and what's going on over there right now.
Brenna said, "Enough about your song, Bill."
No, I like it. I'm down for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we'll see what happens this weekend and kind of where it leads. But I feel like the Beavers are kind of on a little bit of a slog through the rest of this season. But we'll find out. I mean, there's always, there's a lot that'll happen over the next, we got 7 weeks. Like, there's a lot of football left.
Yep.
Going to go to a Blazers preseason game this week?
I don't know. There's my answer for you. I don't know. I'm going to make that decision once I find out what my day looks like tomorrow.
Well, if you were going to go to a Blazers preseason game, it would be on Friday at 7 p.m. So I'm going to guess you're not. But
yeah, that's not really a part of my.
Donovan Clingan had a double-double on Sunday.
Yes, he did.
Well, Chauncey Billups was in Springfield getting inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame alongside such luminaries as Showtime stopper Michael Cooper, Air Canada Vince Carter, Jack Nicholson. I love that they're putting fans in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I think they should have done it sooner. Spike Lee, great. Jack Nicholson, fabulous. Billy Crystal, yes. But can we get Diane Cannon in there next, please? I stand for Diane. That's what I say. That's my hashtag that I'm starting. I stand for Diane. Hashtag I stand for Diane.
I don't know who that is.
How do you not know? Diane Cannon was married to Cary Grant, a great film star of the 70s, 80s, 90s. Mm-hmm. If you loved the made-for-TV Christmas in Connecticut as much as I do, she very famously for years, she has baseline seats for the Lakers, and for years she would bring the Lakers brownies to the game that she would get delivered to the team room, and it was her special connection to the players. When the team moved from the Forum to Staples Center, there was a real conundrum over what to do because unlike at the Forum, apparently, they had stricter rules at Staples Center about bringing outside food and beverage. And so Diane Cannon, for the first game at Staples Center, pulled in to her special parking and tried to walk in with her tray of brownies to be delivered to the locker room. And they weren't going to let her in. It became a whole thing. Ultimately, Diane won that battle. And certainly a super fan. So if we're going to have a class of super fans every year, I hope Diane Cannon is in class too. Also, Jimmy Goldstein. Was Jimmy Goldstein not in this class? I don't think so. So, I don't know. And then we got to go down the list, outside. I mean, the Blazers have super fans. Katie Lang, not on the same level, but she's getting there. Ian Carmel, Beaverton's Ian Carmel.
Ian Carmel into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Yeah, I think it says a lot that you bringing up something about the Blazers has gotten us to this point of talking about brownies and the Lakers.
The movie
is what it is right now. Get me to the season. We'll have more takes once the season starts.
You should watch Heaven Can Wait with Diane Cannon. You should watch that one. It's Warren Beatty. He's a football star who becomes an angel. You should watch it. Heaven Can Wait.
Okay. I'll put that on my never-ending list of movies people tell me I should see that I haven't seen.
So that means you're never going to watch my film recommendation?
Yes. That means that, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Brenna, we watched one of the greatest football games ever played in the state of Oregon this last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows what the next week holds. But once we do, we'll come right back here to the Oregonian Sports Podcast to talk about it. We'll be breaking it down in our very unique and enjoyable way, having fun like we do every single week here. We appreciate you coming along for the ride, listening, supporting, reading, subscribing. I am very happy to say we did not get to my latest column. I am sparing you having to talk about it, even though I made you read it. But I did track down the owner of the lost sneaker that I wrote about off Saturday's game on the field at Autzen Stadium. Please go read that. A gentleman by the name of Big Mac lost his shoe, was hoping he could be reunited with it. So I set out on a quest to get him back his shoe. Read the Oregonian to find out if I was successful. Brenna, thank you for your time. As always, I hope you have a fabulous week.
Bye.